Okay everyone, welcome back to another video on the channel. Today we're back on GT Sport and we're back with the final round in the FIA Manufacturers Championship, and this was the second race of the day, the final race I did driving for Aston Martin at Bathurst, and the final race that I'll probably ever do driving for Aston Martin for the time being in the FIA Manufacturers Championship. So in this qualifying, we managed to qualify much better in this race, starting P4 in a good position to pick up some good points straight away after the start. We wanted to try and get in the slipstream of the VLX driver in front of us. Obviously the Toyota FT1 is not the fastest car down the straight. The Aston Martin has very good top speed, so picking that slipstream up, we're going to try and see if we can have a little look down the right hand side. But in the previous race he did block that move off, he does it this time. We're going to go down the left hand side and see if we can get down around the outside, although this isn't extremely hard. He squeezes us as much as pretty much is fair to the left hand side of the track, and we have to pretty much back out of that as with GTA Matty behind us. We don't want to make a mistake there and let GTA Matty past us in the other Aston Martin. As you can see now, going through the twisty section, just trying to keep the car nice and smooth through this section. We said about in the other race we did, really important to keep smooth on the front. Obviously this race was going to be a case of whether we do the strategy was it going to be pit lap 4 or lap 5. In the last race I think we decided to pit lap 5 and have better tyres, but that was with this race starting towards the front of the grid in the top 4, more likely that I was going to start and go for the pit stop strategy at the end of lap 4, because I wanted to make sure that I get the advantage over anyone in front of me or over cars. You know, didn't want to get cars getting the undercutting on me and getting past me and then getting stuck in traffic. So very likely that I was going to go for the end of lap 4 stop, as we get quite a good exit on that final corner, nearly losing control there as we're really trying to get on the power early, because we really wanted to get the slipstream off of the Toyota in front of us and try and go for a move. He's going to go defensive down the right hand side, but that's not going to stop the Aston Martin on the straights passing the Toyota FT1. The FT1 just doesn't have the power to defend against the Aston Martin, and we make that move and put ourselves up into P3 in this top split FIA race. So some big points. There's an opportunity to get quite big points in this race. I think it was a 2.8 or 2.9k lobby, something like that. Not the top, it wasn't obviously the most amount of points because the top 16 was just before this, so there was still some fast drivers in here, but there was an opportunity to pick up points. And then qualifying went okay in this. It still wasn't perfect. We had definitely had potential to go another 2 or 3 attempts faster, but I was reasonably happy with getting that lap in to put me in P4 as we now work our way to start lap 2 up the hill now, trying to see if we can get close enough to that BMW to pick up the slipstream. However, we were just a little bit too far back. The M6 is probably one of the strongest cars around this track in race trim. It's a very, very competitive car. There is obviously better cars for the daily race. We all know about the McLaren, the new McLaren, the GTR that got added, that is extremely fast around this car, the F1 GTR. It's around this track, it's probably the fastest car I think on the Group 3 category. It's just so fast in a straight line, it dominates this race. So in a daily race you're going to go that car, but if it wasn't in a daily race, I think the BMW is definitely up there as a selection if the McLaren wasn't an option to be one of the cars I would pick. There's a few cars. The Aston Martin, though, I have to say, in race trim, quite nice to drive, fairly comfortable. Not the fastest through the middle section. This section here now is where the Aston Martin does tend to suffer a little bit. It doesn't have the speed through them fast corners. You can't keep the foot planted. You have to kind of give it a little lift every now and then. But it's very stable through the final downhill section here now. That's where the car seems fairly safe. And then getting on the power, it's really good gearing set up for turn 1 and the exit of that corner, the way the gearing is. So that does help out the Aston Martin on this track, as you see now, working our way down the straight. And now this is the Aston Martin strength, obviously. The straight line power zone, it really does gain. You can see we're actually gaining on that M6. You can see it in front, how he's closing in. We're not really in the slipstream. That's just pure straight line advantage over the M6 compared to the Aston Martin. But through the twisty section, again, this isn't where the Aston Martin is at its strength. You can see that FT1 behind us managing to gain on us there, but obviously picked up the slipstream, and then through the twisty section, much more competitive car through them types of corners. So at the moment now, that FT1 is just sitting in our slipstream and using the straight line advantage he's getting from the slipstream, and then through the middle sector he's going to be a lot more competitive. So we need to be careful that we don't let him too close, that he's going to be able to make a move. However, he runs wide. If you've seen in the mirror then, he ran a little bit wide out of turn 1. Again, I think the FT1 is a little bit trickier to drive through turn 1 because the Aston Martin is so planted through turn 1, and you're able to really get on the power because of the way the gearing is, and it gives it a nice exit speed from that corner, which really sets you up for that straight. So you see now staying very close to P2, not really in the slipstream though. One thing what happens over with this race is because the Aston Martin is quite aggressive on its tyres when the fuel is heavy, it tends to drop off on the first stint. However, on the second stint when the fuel's a little bit lower, the Aston Martin was definitely more competitive. I found that in the first race we did, I found that in the first stint it was very heavy obviously and the tyres were wearing quite fast, but then on the second stint when the fuel's starting to wear down, it seemed more competitive. So I was hoping for the same in this race. As you can see, we're starting to lose a little bit ground now on P2. This is the stage of the race where the tyre wear on that M6 is going to start taking effect, and he's going to be able to pull away a bit, as we're just trying to keep it clean though, make sure we don't pick up any penalties. Obviously at this track, one thing which was a massive concern was the penalty zone. Going down this straight now, because of where it was placed, if you had a 1 second penalty, it would actually lose you more like 3, probably nearer to 4 seconds, because it was right there on the straight. So you're going 140 miles per hour as you enter it, it will break you down to 50, 60, and you would lose so much time. It really was a bit of a disaster if you picked up a penalty at Bathurst. As you see that FT1 picking our slipstream up, we're going to go defensive down the left hand side. He's decided to not go for that move, maybe just thinking I'm going to use the slipstream of that Aston Martin in front to help his race and push him along. Also, as through the middle sector, through the fast corners, the FT1 was definitely more competitive, but down the straights it just did not have the speed. Unless he gets a really good exit out of turn 1, he might be able to go for a move into the braking of turn 2, but it'd have to be very close to the rear gearbox to really make any sort of move into turn 2 as we try and hook that corner up. And at this stage we're running quite well. You can see we're in P3, we're in a solid position in this race, and at this stage race I was thinking podium is not, we've got a chance of a podium in this race, and it'd be a really nice way to end our championship with Aston Martin if that happened. But for now I was thinking of the race at this point of the race was we're going to pit on this lap. Obviously I've pretty much settled for pitting on this lap because I didn't want to get jumped by anyone behind me. Obviously I didn't want that FT1 to get a jump on me, because if it's that much faster on straight, I know we passed him easily before, but if he pulls away he might be able to just about stay ahead. So I felt like the safest way to do this would be to just try and make sure that we do the fastest way if we get clean air out of the pits, which in general we should be okay, because a lot of cars were, I noticed from the first race, a lot of cars were pitting at the end of lap 4, so there was only myself and I think a few other cars that did the lap 5 pit. So I felt this would be a safe way to do it, and we should be okay with traffic. Obviously sometimes it works out bad for you and you can pick up traffic, but you can see that BMW M6 is really starting to pull away on this lap. So I felt if he's going to extend that, then if I do the undercut I might be able to jump him. However, I was pretty much settling for the opportunity of a P3 in this race at this point, because we're obviously losing ground now to M6. However, on the second stint, like I said before, the Aston Martin, once the fuel goes down, starts to look after its tyres a little bit better. Probably a little bit, in comparison to like the Porsche and stuff, a little bit better. Obviously it's still not as good on the tyres as the Porsche, but relatively speaking, once the fuel goes down, it is a big improvement with the tyre wear I found with this Group 3 car. Maybe, I'm not so sure with the Group 4 car. The Group 4 car is just a bit of a nightmare, but the Group 3 car definitely improves its tyre wear as it gets lighter on the fuel tank. So we're going to go on the pit entry, trying to make sure we brake early, but I really wanted to attack this to make sure that the car behind doesn't get us any advantage, and we really hooked that pit entry up. You could see the FT1 behind lost a bit of time there. He was only a few attempts going into the pits behind us, and at the rate we went in there, we might be able to be ahead of the FT1 when we come out of the pits. It's going to be really interesting to see when we're going up the straight just how much time that pit entry gained us, because we actually really hooked up. I really went aggressive on the second part, got on the throttle and attacked the entry into the pits. So let's see as we come out the pits lane, and look at the difference that's made gained us there. In the mirror now, the FT1, and look on the bottom right hand corner, you cannot see the FT1 until quite far back. He's outside the slipstream, and this was really good news for myself, because now I can push on and be aggressive on the straight and gain even more time. The FT1 might gain a bit of time back on the corners in the middle section. However, then the back straight, if he's not in the slipstream, I'm going to gain another 2-3 attempts on that FT1. So this was really important for myself. So now I've just got to keep concentrating and keep this as solid as I can drive now. And to be fair, I think I drove this second stint really well. I was really in the zone. We were concentrating 100% live on stream. I don't think I even spoke anything really. Might have been a few words that came out my mouth when we were live streaming it. Obviously, if you want to check out the live stream, go back to the round 8 manufacturers, and I think it was Nations round 8, and the live streams on there, so you can check out the actual live footage. But you can see we've got some cars up ahead that look like they're going for either the lap 5 stint or the other possibility which some drivers were doing, which was the no stopper. Now the no stopper, in my personal opinion, I said it in the first race, was not the fastest way to do this track. It was definitely slower in my opinion, even if you've got a good car with that's really good on tyre. Maybe the Porsche might have been able to eke it out and be relatively similar on pace, but even then I think on fresh tyres the Porsche still would have probably been a little bit better because it's so fast through that middle sector with fresh tyres. I think that going with the no stopper, you run the risk of obviously understeering, running wide, losing grip on the traction. The only other thing with the strategy of pitting was you run the risk of traffic, and if a lot of people went for the no stopper, it could cause you issues. However, one car in front of us pitting on the end of lap 5, obviously going to shorten his stint for the second stint, but that's not going to be an issue for us. We're way ahead of that car now. We'll be about 12-15 seconds ahead by the time we come out the pits. But we've got two cars in front of us there that look like they are going for the no stop strategy. So we've got obviously SRC in sync in the M6, I think it is, that was right in front of us as we went in the pits. He looks like he's going for a no stop strategy. He's quite far up ahead, and he's going to be losing a lot of time each lap now as we go through the purple sector there, really hooking that first corner up. However, Storm, who was in the lead of this race, who pitted the same lap as us in P2 there, he's just managing to pull a little bit further away. Seems like he's got a little bit more pace in that Porsche. I do know how good. I remember driving the Porsche. I think we won a top split race here in the Porsche when it was in the previous season when I was driving for Porsche in the FIA Manufacturers, and it was just so good in race conditions, the Porsche, especially through the middle sector. It was a little bit weak on the straights, but you found that you were coming out some of these corners so much faster than any other cars. It really did suit. It's like pretty much every track in race conditions, the Porsche is just so good. I do miss driving that Porsche obviously, but you can see now going down straight, and we're already pretty much caught up the VLX driver that's going for the no stop strategy. So that's pretty much good news for myself, because we're going to be back into P3, and so we're back to where we pretty much was before the pit stop. So we can't really lose anything because we've gained quite a bit of time over the FT1 that's behind. If you look in the mirror, you're just about seeing him in the distance there, coming through the corner before the back straight. So we've gained quite a bit of time. As soon as we were out the slipstream, we were able to pull away. And this is another thing with like I said before, with the Aston Martin, the fuel's gone down, the tyre wear's a little bit better, and the car's coming alive a bit. You can see hitting reasonably good sector times. It wasn't a perfect lap this, but it was definitely slightly better than what we had done in the first stint, obviously with the full fuel in the car. But now we're getting very close to this back marker. We're going to lose a little bit of time now going through the final corner as we're having to brake a little bit earlier. I'm trying to see if we can get down the left hand side. You can see I was looking down the left straight away, getting on the throttle, going to go down the left hand side. Maybe lost a little bit of time on that lap, but still go over with 202.3. Probably would have been a little bit faster with how cautious we was on the brake into the final corner, but again fairly cleanly past him, and we're up into P3 with the Lost Storm just a little bit further up there. You can see him in the Porsche slightly pulling away every lap. Not much I could do about his pace. I think his fastest lap was in the 201s, so I couldn't really match that type of speed in the Porsche, and I'm not too sure if I could match it even if I was driving the Porsche. It'd be fairly close. We could get reasonably, I think I could get a little bit closer than what I could in the Aston Martin because of the tyre wear, but I think he drove really well, so very well driven by the Lost Storm. But in P1 still is that BMW M6. However, we've still got 3 more laps to go, and on the map you can see there he's not too far ahead, so don't know whether he's had some sort of issue with picking up a penalty or what, or whether it's just a case of the tyres are really falling off. And this is a risk, when you're running these tyres, when they're fully, they're wearing out, you run the risk of hitting a wall, running wide, getting on the grass, anything like that, picking up penalties. You increase your chances of something like that happening. So it's a very risky strategy for other reasons compared to the one stop. Obviously the one stop is the traffic, like I said before, but we're trying to keep it nice and smooth. You can see how aggressive I'm driving this now. I felt like because I could see on the map that there was a possibility that we might be able to get P1 if he starts getting into trouble with tyre wear. I thought we might be able to possibly get a P2 in this race. What I needed to do was keep an eye on when Storm managed to get past him to see how close he was. Obviously we've still got over 2 laps to go in this race, and with the tyre difference we're going to be over 2-3 seconds, probably 4 seconds a lap faster. And you can just see there through the fast flowing, the left hand corner there, the M6 was only just in front of Storm, Let's just see when Storm actually gets past it. It looks like they're extremely close. You can see him there going for the final corner, and that M6 is really suffering with the tyre wear. You could see it running wide, and now we're getting very close. 2 laps to go, and he's only a few seconds up the road. So this is looking like we're going to have the chance of getting the Aston Martin into a really nice final effort with this car. So really sending off with a good result. You can see he's tantalizingly close now. We're picking up seconds on him every sector, and I was really trying to push now. I could see that it was getting closer and closer, and we've got a comfortable gap to the drivers behind. We've managed to really pull out a lead and give ourselves the opportunity to do this. If I was defending, we might have been losing a little bit of time, but now we can just concentrate on hooking the corners up, hooking every single apex up, and hitting them braking markers, and not making any mistakes and not hitting the wall. You can see through this section, really aggressive on the throttle there. You could see how much I'm really pushing on this final split in this race, is trying to make sure that I get every opportunity to get as close to that BMW as possible. And you can see we're gaining so much time on them through every corner. This is why I think the no stopper was not, it probably wasn't the fastest way. In my opinion, it was quite a few seconds slower as we go through the left-hander, and we've managed to get really close to this M6 now. We might even be able to do it on this lap. It's going to be very close as we go through the downhill section, trying to keep it nice and smooth now. I know I've got more than a lap and a bit to go before we need to get past him, so P2 was looking very, very likely because of the speed advantage that the Aston Martin is now going to have over that M6 on fresher tyres. So we're going to get better traction zone, we're going to get better traction out of every slow corner, and it shouldn't be a complicated overtaking the end, as we're now very close to picking up that slipstream from the BMW M6 as we approach the final lap in this race. And obviously the great thing we've got for us is that we don't need to rush this move. You know, we can just take it when it happens, because look how close we are there on that camera. I love that camera at Bathurst. It looks so good. You can see in the distance there, we've got a nice solid gap over the FT1, so we can just wait for the opportunity to come and go for it as soon as it's available. As we see it down the left hand side, we can see we're going to be able to throw it down the inside. We're going to have much better tyre grip through the entry and the braking zone, and in the end a very simple move that puts us into P2 before we start the final lap. And that is really going to be good, because now the FT1 that's behind has got no chance. Even though it's going to have slightly better tyre wear now at this stage of the race, he's not really going to have an opportunity to get close to us. We've got over 2-3 seconds away from him. He's now got a car in between us, and now I've just got to bring this car home to the finish in P2. And I'm really, if I can do this now, I was really getting quite excited, to be honest, because we didn't really manage a really good season with this Aston Martin. We did miss some races when we were ill. I think the Interlagos race was one of them races where I wish I could have done, because in general I'm quite strong at Interlagos, and the Aston Martin was actually fairly strong at that track as well. So it was a shame that we couldn't do that round, because we possibly could have picked up some reasonably big points. And with the way this race is looking, we're going to pick up some good points here, which should bump us right back up into the top section within the manufacturer. We were lurking around P10 or so, P9, P10, obviously not having a great season at all, but this result could push us right back up there as we try and hook these corners up. Tyre wear's kicking in, but even with the extra lap on this stint, because the fuel's running down, the car is still feeling fairly comfortable to drive. We're not overdriving it now on this in lap. We want to make sure that we don't make a mistake, obviously, on the final lap, and lose a very solid drive so far at Bathurst in our final ever race driving for Aston Martin. As we go through that left hand corner, really important to hook that apex up so you can get on the throttle nice and early, and yeah, we did that pretty much spot on, and we've managed to pretty much secure the lead over the FT1 behind. You can see how far back he is. He's not going to be in any position to make any sort of move on us as we go through the final corners now to secure a very, very well driven, in my opinion, P2. We can see there we didn't really have the pace to match the Porsche, but that's kind of expected. Velostorm's a very fast driver anyway, one of the fastest drivers on project cars, so on GT Sport he's also very fast as well. And you can see we're about 4 or 5, I think we were about 5 seconds behind when we finished the race from the Porsche, which isn't too bad. Or, you know, he went over on a very fast time. I think it was like 43 or 44 seconds at 18:44. We went over on 18:49, which was a reasonably good finishing time for race pace with the Aston Martin. I was reasonably happy with that. We had obviously we could have been a little bit faster if we would have had a clean run right the way through, but we come out of that race with over 2,600 points, which puts me up to P3 in the manufacturer. Unfortunately, we couldn't go for the top 2 spots, which is a bit frustrating, because I think if we would have done Interlagos, we might have got the number 1 spot with a good result there, because we had 1,400 points as as one of our point scoring rounds. I think we would have definitely have got rid of that 1400 at Interlagos because it is a strong track for myself. So a little bit of a shame that we couldn't do that, but we weren't well, so there was no way I could race that. But really happy with how the season ended. A really good send-off for the Aston Martin, and we'll be moving on to a new manufacturer for the next FIA Manufacturer season. I'm not 100% sure what car I'll be picking yet, but I will decide over the next few days because the new season does start next Wednesday, I believe it is. So I'll be looking forward to trying out my new car and getting used to it and seeing what it can do. Anyway, thanks again for watching this video. Make sure you give it a thumbs up if you've enjoyed it. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already subscribed. And make sure you click that notification button so you don't miss any future videos. Thanks again for watching, everyone.